I'm going to go through how to prepare a cost of production report. The problem I'm going to go through is problem 18.5 at the end of your chapter, which is pretty similar to 18.6a. The whole point of a cost of production report is to assign costs to ending inventory and how much is transferred out. So costs can only come from two places. The costs are either already there, so in this problem we have $270,000 worth of costs in beginning inventory, and then this period we added 1.2 million plus conversion costs of 2,212,000. So we added $3.412 million worth of costs this period. What we want to do is figure out if those costs are either still here or have been transferred out. So notice the problem with just transferring them out directly is some of the finishing beginning inventory, the other 60%, was in this cost. And also these costs include working on some that I didn't finish that are only 80% done. So I need to separate these costs, the 270 plus the 1.2 plus the 2.2, and figure out where those costs, are they still here, or are they still gone, are they gone, transferred out. So what I do is I do the same thing with costs as units. I know that inventory was either already there or I started it, and then it was either finished or not finished. And then note I have three stages of inventory, mainly because I finished my beginning inventory. It was started last period, or I started and completed it. Note I did 100% of the work, or I started it but didn't finish it. So the three stages: beginning inventory I need to finish, these I started and finished, and these I started but didn't finish. So this little section up here I always do, and I basically do it so I don't lose units. So if I read through this, work in process inventory, September 1st, 50,000 units. So in beginning inventory, I have 50,000 units. Okay, and if I go on down here, this is a cost, that's a cost, that's a cost, but units started during September, so I started another 300,000. So now I have $350,000 worth of inventory that I've got to figure out where it went. You will always be given three of those four numbers: beginning inventory, started, transferred out, and ending inventory. Some students get the numbers in the wrong place. It's just, quite frankly, a matter of reading the words and putting the words where the words say they should go. So these are started during September, so I put them in started. Units completed and transferred in September, so I must have transferred them out from work in process to finished goods. I know that this is 350,000, and I know that this will also be 350,000. So all these units have to agree. So therefore, if I transferred out 280, but I have 350,000, then my ending inventory must be 70,000. So now I can just copy my units down. So I know my beginning inventory had a total of 50,000 units. Ending inventory had 70,000 units. So I must have started and completed 230,000 units, because I know 50 plus some number plus 70 equals 350. So I must have started and completed 230. Some other people say, all right, if I transferred out 280 but 50 I didn't start, that's where I get the 230. Or if I started 300 but didn't finish 70, that's also where I get the 230. So this area right here is just so I don't lose track of units. I also don't want to lose track of costs, so I'm just going to put some costs here. This is going to be my direct materials column. So I had 150,000 in beginning inventory, so now I'm just putting it across from beginning inventory for no real reason, just looks nicer. And I had 120,000 of conversion costs, so my total there is $270,000 worth of costs. Then this period I added 1.2 million of direct materials, and I added 2.2 of conversion costs. So notice I don't need to separate out labor and overhead if they occurred in the same pace throughout the production. So now I know that I added a total of 3.412, and I'm just going to total this, and this is going to be my check figure at the end. I have $3,682,000 worth of costs that I need to figure out what happened to them. Were they finished or were they transferred out? So now what I do is I basically want to figure out a cost per unit. My cost per unit is figured out using equivalent units. So I'm only going to take what I did this period. So I'm going to take these numbers right here and I'm going to set them aside. I'll highlight them so I don't finish them. I'm going to set them aside because I know I finished beginning inventory and I transferred it out. So actually I could go ahead and put those costs right down here. Because those were costs transferred out. So I know I've at least transferred out $270,000 worth of costs. But of these 300,000 units, 70,000 weren't finished. So I need to split these costs between the 300,000 and the 70,000 that weren't, or the 70,000 that weren't finished and the 280,000 that were finished. Okay. So now I ask myself, percentage-wise, what percent of the items did I have to add materials to? Well, this one problem says over here, assume the materials are added at the start of processing. So if the inventory was already there, the materials were already in them because they were started. So that's going to be 0%. Okay, this one over here, that conversion costs were 40% complete. So if they were 40% complete, when I walked in the door, I had to add 60%. Notice what I did last period plus what I finished this period is 100%. If I started them and finished them, that's 100%. It's always 100%. If you start something and finish something, you did 100% of the work. And then ending inventory, again, the materials are added at the start of processing, so if I started them, I must have added all my materials, but notice I only got them 80% done. So this period I did the 80%. So don't get these fractions or these percentages backwards because they can't be the same. You finish beginning inventory. If 40% is already there, I did 60% this period, and if I started these, I did the 80% this period. So now I just multiply my numbers, and so I have 0 times 50,000, so I added no equivalent units for materials for beginning, and notice the other two are 100% because if I started them, I added them. So notice that this makes sense because if I add materials when I start them, this 300,000 and that 300,000 should always be the same. You don't necessarily have to add all the materials at the beginning of the process. If I take my 50,000 times 60%, so equivalent unit wise, I did that wrong. Equivalent unit wise, I did 30,000 worth of, or added materials to 30,000 worth of goods. This one is the 230 times 100,000. And this one is, I did 80% this period. And again, don't think you did the 20% because I did 80% of this period. The 20% will be done next period. So my equivalent units are 316,000. Okay? Then the next thing I'm going to do is get my cost per equivalent unit. So I have costs this period of 1.2 million, and I have conversion costs this period of 202. So notice if I don't include the units for this period, I don't want to include the costs for last period. I'm sorry. If I did not include the units for last period, see this is 0 because I put all the materials in last period, I shouldn't include the costs. I'll be double counting because I moved those down there. So now I divide by my units. And so now I have my cost per equivalent unit of $4 is the 1.2 divided by the 300,000, and the 212 divided by that number. So I have cost per equivalent unit for materials, cost per equivalent unit for conversion costs. So notice I brought down my cost of beginning inventory already there, so I know I transferred out beginning inventory, I transfer out beginning inventory, and I transfer out the items that I started and completed. So these two right here, these two lines are the ones I transfer out. So I'll put those in orange, I guess. Okay, so notice I bring forward what I did this last period, and then I need to finish my beginning inventory. Well, my units are 0, and I multiply it by $4 worth of cost. So that makes sense that that should be 0. My started completed is 70,000 equivalent units at $4 each. So if you notice, I'm basically converting these numbers from units to cost. So I have a beginning inventory of 30,000 and $7 each, and started completed of 230 times $7 each. Okay, so now I know that my my total transferred out costs are $2,300,000. I'm going to pause this because I have an error in a formula. Okay, I fixed it. I just hit the wrong number here. So this 920,000 is the 230,000 units times the $4 each. So I hit the ending inventory instead of the started and completed. So notice my line says started and completed. So this number here is what I transferred out during the period. My ending inventory is 70,000 this time times my $4 each. And this one I added materials to the equivalent of 56,000 times $7 each. So my ending inventory is that number, 672. So now I can double check. Here's my check figure. If I add up the 310 and the 672, I should have this number right there. And I do. So it balances and I should be right. So notice there's only two places inventory can be. It's either already there, 50,000 units and $270,000 worth of costs, or I added it this period. This is my units. These are my costs. Or, and there's only two places they can come from, those two areas, and there's only two places they can go. They're either transferred out, 280,000 units at $3,010,000 worth of costs, and 70,000 units at 672. So next period, this line here, this line I've highlighted, will become this line up here. And then I'll go through it again. The last thing I want to show you is your book does it two ways. It kind of does it like this. I just throw the costs up here. Your book doesn't throw the costs up there, just so I have it right in front of me. You don't have to do it on your online homework. You feel free to make up your own Excel spreadsheet. No, I'm not going to send you mine because it would have the formulas in it and it would just be a matter of plugging them in, but feel free to make your own. But I want to show you how they do this little part in a few of the problems. Okay, so basically they do the same thing in this middle part, except they say based on monthly input, and they finish beginning WIP and they start new units, and then they say based on monthly output, and they have transferred out and ending inventory. So notice these two lines right here are up on the top. So notice this is 0 and 30,000. Okay, and then I start new units. The ones I start, I shouldn't have said those two lines on the top. The ones I start are the 230 and the 70, so that's the 300, and the 230 and the 56, and that's 286. And then I either transfer them out or they're still here. So my ones that are transferred out are my 230,000 right here. So it's actually technically 0 plus 230 is this 230. and this is 30 plus 230 is 260, and then my 70 and 56 and 70 and 56. So these two numbers agree. So it is sort of like this up there. The reason I don't particularly use this, and they basically sandwich this in there instead of this. The reason I don't use this one is because you can as quickly get your costs down here. So notice I just took 0 times 4 plus 230 times 4 plus 70 times 4 to get this number, and that number. And then I took 230 times 7, 56 times 7, 30 times 7, 230 times 7, and 56 times 7 to get this number, this number, this number. The beginning inventory, I want to remind you, just simply came down from there. So notice if I use this, I can quickly enter formulas in. If I use theirs, where I put based on monthly input, I don't have quick numbers I can multiply by $4.07. So hopefully that helps you.